Welcome back to Post-Traumatic Thriving. We have Tanya, we have just an epic guest.
Amazing.
Rhonda, thanks so much for being here. To kind of paraphrase where we've been, it's been a wild ride where Tanya went from Midwest, kind of a dysfunctional family, some ugly stuff going on. And then we talked about the unthinkable, her dad shooting her mom in front of her, this little 14-year-old girl, and then turning the gun on himself. My head's exploding. Mine too. Then we talked about the ugliness of the drinking and, masking the pain.
And prison, all the fun stuff.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
So,
but, again, we're talking about trauma, right?
Yeah.
So
it's
here
tough,
we go.
Tough conversations.
Rhonda.
Yeah. So before we get to all the fun stuff, we're talking about Oprah and books and TV shows, and we'll get there. But because we know your background, it's astounding. But this episode is titled "Survive," the survival stage. You mentioned that chart with the gold stars. There it is.
It is.
Rhonda, tell us about that. Tell us all about that story there.
And you framed it.
Well, I framed it when I found it. So this is the funny thing. I did not know I still had this. So the story is that at my third suicide attempt, I was, put in a psychiatric ward for 3 days, about to be evaluated. Did I have issues? They deemed me not crazy, sent me home to my studio apartment, living by myself. By this time I was living in Los Angeles. This was not a good idea, going alone at home. Didn't really have any friends. Didn't have any friends. And realized that no matter how much I'd worked on myself, I still had the feeling that there was something wrong with me. And so when I got home that day, I said to myself, I have to start over. And I said, what do people do when they start over? What do kindergartners do? And kindergartners use gold stars and a calendar. So I went and got a gold stars and a calendar, and I started keeping track of every single good thing I did. And I'm talking little things, like I'll read a couple. Hurt, but didn't get angry. I can't believe, think about it. I was pleasant at work. And I use the word pleasant. I was pleasant at work. I gave myself a gold star. I wrote, I am okay. And I wrote a gold star. I didn't act impulsively. I called for support. So every time I did something, I cleaned the house. I gave myself a gold star. So everything I did, and at the end of the 30 days, I did this for 30 days, as you can see, I had gold stars, and I knew I was worth saving.
Yeah.
So that's really was the beginning of my decision to save myself, to really save myself, which led me to really start looking at my alcoholism, because I'd had 3 DUIs, and my third DUI, you had to go through a year-long program. You had to meet with an alcohol counselor. You had to go through a year-long program. And of course, I was like, why do I need this? Well, it was probably the best thing that ever happened, because an alcohol counselor gave me a book called Father Loss. And it was the first time I'd ever read a book about father loss. And there was a whole chapter on what happens and how it feels for your father to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. And when I read that chapter, I was like, because again, remember, I'm just going through the state. I'm just da-da-da-da-da. Yes, I'm screwed up. Da-da-da-da-da. I'm not actually going, you mean I'm screwed up because my father killed my mother in front of me when I was 14? I wasn't, it was still I still was pushing it away, right? But when I was willing to look at my drinking, I did another. So now I'm going to tell you my other 30-day thing I did. So this is my 30 days of giving myself gold stars. Uh-huh. And then the next 30 days thing I did, which is of course not right after, but a few years later, is my friend who told me, well, you come from an abusive family. Thank you, Bill. He also is the one that said, well, you're an alcoholic. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't drink during the day. I don't get sloppy drunk. What are you talking about?
Thank you, Bill. We love
Bill.
No,
seriously, Bill saved my life. And so
Randy, do you know who Bill is?
Well, we're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yes, but I'm talking about actual Bill. Like there was a real friend of mine named Bill.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh.
My friend Bill, my actual friend Bill, he was a bartender where I cocktail waitressed. And he's the one that told me I was abused. I'll never forget it. I was like, what are you talking about? And then he's the one that said, you're an alcoholic. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so basically when he put that idea in my head, and I remember, this is how he said it, by the way. I was in Los Angeles by this point. I was trying to be an actress. And he said to me, he goes, Rhonda, I can't believe how well he did it. He was like, Rhonda, it's going to be such a bummer. And I go, what? What's going to be a bummer? Oh, it's going to be such a bummer. I go, what? What's going to be a bummer? He goes, well, you're really talented. Because he was in the same acting school I was in. He goes, you're really talented. He goes, you're going to become famous. There's no doubt about it that you're going to become famous. But alcohol is a progressive disease. So by the time you reach your fame, you're going to lose everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at him going, what do you mean I'm going to lose everything? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, you're going to make it. You're going to be famous, but then you're going to lose everything because of your alcoholism. And I was shell shocked. I was like, what? I'm going to lose everything? He's like, oh yeah, you are going to lose it because it's only going to get worse. Alcohol is progressive. So I basically said to him and to me that I'm going to prove I'm not an alcoholic. I'm going to show you I am not an alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm going to show it to you. So I said for 30 days, I'm going to only have one drink. Now notice I didn't say no drinks. I said one drink.
One drink.
And if I can have one drink a day, then I am not an alcoholic. Okay.
Or on Friday.
I'm not gonna, I can prove to myself that I'm not an alcoholic if I can have one drink a day. So I could have one drink a day. That was easy. The challenge was all day long, all I thought about was when I was going to drink. So if I have it at lunch, I can't have it at happy hour. If I have it at happy hour, I can't have it at dinner. If I have it at dinner, I can't have it after dinner. If at after dinner, then I can't have it before I go to bed. Like, what am I going to? I spent the entire day trying to figure out when I could maximize the one drink. I did this for 30 days. And I remember at the end of 30 days calling him and saying, I'm an alcoholic. It wasn't that I couldn't have one drink. It was that I had to figure out how to best consume my alcohol. Like my whole mind was set on that. So I called him on a Wednesday and I said, pick me up tomorrow. I'm ready to go to a meeting. Mm-hmm. And that 30 days really showed me how my addiction played out, how, obsessive I was, et cetera, et cetera. It was really, truly transformational. And so then I got sober. And when I got sober, everything changes when you're not down in it with alcohol. It's like everything's out. So I got sober, just quick story. I got sober in May. I was I didn't have a car at the time.
And how old were you?
I was 28, 27.
Sorry to age you.
I was 27. Right, so I was 27. So I'd only been drinking for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And because I started drinking when I was like 17. And that because I started college when I was 17. And so I quit drinking when I'm in May. I don't have a car at this time. I am riding a bike all over Los Angeles. And if you're from LA, you know how difficult that is because I was in a bad car accident. And so I didn't have a car. And I didn't have the money to buy a car. So I would ride my bike everywhere. So I was riding my bike and got hit by a car. Then I got sober. My boyfriend broke up with me. So in a 30-day period, wow. I went to my first meeting. I was in a car accident. By the way, I got hit by this car. I couldn't work for 30 days. I couldn't eat. I could only drink soup. I didn't have any friends. I had to talk about needing help. I had to call the restaurant I worked at and ask somebody to please bring me the soup of the day so I could eat something. Oh my God. And so those 30 days, I could not work. I had no money. My boyfriend broke up with me. If there was ever a time I wanted to drink, that was the time, right? And so I remember being in bed.
I want to drink just hearing about this.
Yeah, and mind you, and also, now remember, I was an actress, and getting hit by that car when I was on my bike, I hit my face. Mm. So my face was completely stitched up. Mm. My teeth had gone through my mouth. It was like my whole face was scarred. Okay. And I remember the doctor saying to me, you're going to need plastic surgery, which I didn't, which is another whole story, but I didn't need plastic surgery eventually. But so I'm in the house, can't go out, stitches on my face, can't eat, don't have teeth, have to call for help to get soup brought over because I can't even go out of the house. And now remember that dad of mine is in my closet. And now I don't have a boyfriend to sleep with. I don't have alcohol to numb myself with. And now all I got is a damn light. And I remember I was so frustrated, just so like beside myself one night. My dad's in my damn closet. And I just started going, Dad, just why are you here? Just go. Why? Just leave me. Why do you haunt me every night? Just leave me alone. Go. And I was so upset. I was just like so upset. And a thought went through my mind. It's a weird thought to have, but it's the thought that went through my mind. If you can't beat him, join him is the thought that went through my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay. I said, Dad, come on over. Dad, come over. I'm sitting on the side of my dad. My dad comes up in front of me and I go, okay, Dad, I forgive you. And I put my arms around him and I hugged him. And he said, that's what I've been waiting for. And that night I went to bed, was crying then. I cried myself to sleep that night. And I had the same dream. My father's chasing me through the woods again, shooting at me. And so this time what I did is I turned around and said, go for it. Just go ahead and shoot me. Just go ahead. So my father put the bullets in the gun in the dream and he shoots at me and it keeps missing. And he puts more bullets in the gun, it keeps missing. And I go ahead, just go ahead. Put the bullets in the gun, keeps shooting, right? Finally, after about the third time, he goes, well, I guess that doesn't work anymore. And he threw the gun away. And there was a little brick wall next to him. And he took his hand and he put it on the other side of the wall and he pulled out a picnic basket. And he goes, do you want to have a picnic? And I said, yes. And my father took that red checkered tablecloth, put it down, and we sat down and we had a picnic. And I have not had a nightmare since.
Wow. The power of you got my tear. I'm tearing. That's the power of forgiveness. And
the power of forgiveness. It's just,
there's power in it.
Yes.
And it's sharing our stories, your story, my story, everybody else's story.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. No, because people don't understand, like, how can you forgive somebody who inflicted harm or, like committed murder? Like, how can you forgive those people? I'm like, I don't know. All I knew is that I wanted what my mom had, and that was peace.
Oh.
She had that.
Yeah. And that I wasn't done with forgiveness. That was just the big forgiveness.
It was the big one.
Yeah, it was the big one. And then there was another big one, which I'll share in just a minute. But that was the beginning of me having a little level of peace, right? I quit drinking so now I'm sober like 30 days at this point. The anniversary of my parents' death is right around the corner. And now I'm single, sober, forgiving, and I'm not having nightmares anymore. So it was like that just not having nightmares every night just changed me. Now, mind you, I still had a lot of trauma, PTSD. Like when I would drive at night, I always thought people were shooting at me, always for years. And I had to go through a whole process of my own, training myself not to do that, not to see that, and be able to drive at night, be able to, be in a dark place without thinking somebody's going to come out and kill me. Because that's how it always felt. I mean, even when I got engaged years later, the minute I got engaged, I literally got engaged on a Sunday, and a Monday I was in the hospital. And they never knew what was wrong with me, because literally for me, even though I prayed, all I did was want to get married, right? Actually getting engaged was like, I'm going to die now. He's going to kill me. I'm going to die. And so I literally was in the hospital for 10 days. They never found out what was wrong with me. At 105 degree temperature, I was delirious for 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So here I am, sober, forgiving, and now I'm ready to get to work.
Right. Okay, wait a second. You've been at work.
No, you're right.
Ready to get to work.
Thank you.
You've been at work.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think, I now was doing it from a sober place, right? Like, because getting sober,
that's one thing.
You think like, oh, I'm sober now, I'm fine. Well, really, it takes 2 years for you to go through basically the whole detox process, right? So I remember that first year going, doing meetings and reading books. Living Sober is the best book. And I remember reading Living Sober and going,
I have it.
God, I do that. 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 Right. And so now I had the space, I had I wasn't, drinking, that I could actually think about these things. Right. Yeah. So, so now it was really 2 years when it took me 2 years. And then I started going to Course in Miracles. I still couldn't say the word God. People could say God, and I would just change it to light. So I started going to Course in Miracles with Marianne Williamson. And every time she'd say God, I'd say light, or I'd say universe, source, something, but just not the word God.
It works for you.
Yay. For me.
Whatever works for you. That's the power of the program, where it's like, hey, your higher power, whatever that is, right? It's like, whatever that is, whomever that is, it's like, just gravitate to that and make it work.
And when you're talking about meetings, you're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. Do I have that right? Okay. Yes. Just want to make sure we know that. And
I was also going to, Course in Miracles twice a week, and, really accelerating all that stuff, going to self-help classes and groups, going to more workshops, but now I'm doing them sober, so now I'm, starting to even get more involved in personal development and self-help, listening to tapes. Like, one of the things that I did for myself, I tell my clients this, when they're like, oh, it's not happening as fast as I want. I go, really? I go, let me tell you something I did. Okay. I was, reading these books and listening to Course in Miracles, going to Course in Miracles. I said, one day I got my cassette tape recorder and I recorded my voice reading out of all my favorite books. Okay. And made that cassette. And that is the only thing I listened to for 2 years. No music, no radio. Every time I went in the car, I used to carry a cassette recorder around with me. I listened to my own voice telling me what I wanted to believe, what I wanted to know about myself, what I wanted to be true. And I said, so when any of my clients ever are like, oh, I go, all right, so go ahead, record, do what I did for 2 years. Don't listen to a damn thing but your own voice telling you a new way of being. That was a critical thing. So I was very proactive now at this point. I was working more as an actress. I was, like I said, going to Course in Miracles. I was definitely more like, I now want to figure, I don't want to just survive, right? I'm surviving. But I don't have nightmares anymore. I'm not drinking. And I really want to figure this out because I really want to thrive.
Sure. And we're going to get there because you do.
We're going to get there in a minute. Yep.
Affirmations.
Nope, not affirmations. Poo-poo to affirmations. Two.
But you mentioned, go ahead, Tanya.
No, it's okay. Go.
Well, you mentioned a second round of forgiveness. Did I miss that, or did you?
No, I haven't shared it yet. Yeah, okay. No, I haven't shared it yet.
Is this a good time?
Sure. But what Tanya's saying is like listening to my own voice is affirmations, and really what it was is different self-help spiritual books that, meditation books, Eastern Buddhism, etc., all different types. And just everything that inspired me and made my heart open, I recorded that.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so here I am, I'm doing all this, and the 20th anniversary of my parents are coming up. And so this is the forgiveness of the forgiveness. So the 20th anniversary of their death is coming up. And I'm a big person about anniversary.
When is that?
It's June 15th.
Okay. Oh my God. Nicole and Ron, June 12th. Okay.
June, big month.
I hate June.
Okay. I used to not be able, between Mother's Day, when it was Mother's Day to Father's Day, and with my parents' anniversary, that 5 to 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
It's hard.
Or no, literally for years, you could just forget me because I could barely function for years. So here it is, the 20th anniversary coming up. And I say to myself, I have got to let my parents go because they have been running my life, making my decisions for me, even now that they're dead. And I remember thinking when I turned 28, my parents now, as I'm moving in my 29th year, they have been dead more than they've been alive. Right. And so the 20th anniversary, they died when I was 14. So now and I remember thinking to myself, I gave them like almost time and a half, right? I was almost, and I was like, no, I am now going to say goodbye to them. I am going to lay them down. And it was a big deal for me. And I created a whole ceremony, and I asked my best friend, Marta, to come with me. And I said, just be my witness. I just need somebody to witness for me to say, to prove that I did it. And so we went to a little lake on Coldwater Canyon. here in LA, and I brought a burning pot. I brought paper and pen and, sage. I just brought all these things with me. And I basically wrote to my mother and my father all the things that, I was mad at them for, all the things that I didn't like, all the things. I just burned them. And then I wrote all the things that I'm grateful for, right? And burn. And then I burned again that I was willing to forgive them. And this literally took hours. I was there for probably 4 to 5 hours. And my best friend did not move for like 5 hours while I was doing this. And I was sobbing and crying and talking the whole time. And then when I got done burning, I buried it up there in Coldwater Canyon. And during that time, Randy and Tanya, people think that my father was the person to forgive. On the 20th anniversary, I had to forgive my mother. I had to forgive my mother because she didn't take me out of the house when he tried to strangle me. I had to forgive my mother for going back with him, which to me is one of the key, like little moments that, perpetuated her eventual murder. All these things, my mother did not keep me safe for those years. And I had to take my mother off the pedestal. I had to take her off the pedestal and look at her as a woman, desperate for love, afraid to disappoint her father, who stayed in a marriage that was not happy, that did not fulfill her, that caused abuse to her daughters. I had to look at her with real and clear eyes. And so that day, I not only forgave my father again, which again was a new level of forgiveness, but I had to forgive my mother. Mm-hmm. And that was way harder. And then lastly, that day, I forgave myself because again, I was carrying that weight of that I didn't do anything. So as I buried all that, and I remember looking at my best friend because she was crying and she's standing there, literally stood still for like 4 hours, 5 hours. I remember taking just a nice deep breath and turning around and walking away. And I remember so vividly that first step that I walked after I was walking away, I said to myself, these are the very first steps I've ever walked on my own. Wow. These are my first steps. My father and mother were running my life for the last 34 years. I wasn't running my life. They were running my life. And I remember just so vividly just feeling like this is my first breath is me. This is my first steps as me. I didn't know who I was necessarily at that moment, but it's like I was starting to figure it out. And it's like, I'm not carrying them anymore. I'm not carrying them anymore.
Freedom.
Powerful.
Freedom. And there's such power in that message. Really, it's freedom isn't, or forgiveness isn't like, hey, let's do lunch or coffee or whatever, right? Forgiveness is like, I don't need to do anything, but I'm choosing to release the pain. I'm choosing to release the trauma or, the disgrace, whatever. It's like, I'm choosing to release that. So the ball and chain that has been hooked to my ankle for so many years, I finally can cut off. And people like misconstrue forgiveness. And oh my God, it's, you and I are on the same page with that.
Yeah, forgiveness is a big deal. And I was working with a client recently and he came to me because he was making $1 million, losing $1 million. Like he'd made so much money, lost it all. And as we're talking, he reveals to me that his father and grandfather did the same thing. That he was so angry that he was doing it because his father did it, his grandfather did it.
Yeah.
And so he's like, can you tell me? I go, forgive them. And he's like looking at me like, what are you talking about? I go, forgive them. He goes, this is a legacy of what it means to be a man in your family. And you have to be willing to forgive them for not breaking the chains. And now you have to. He like literally looked at me like, you mean I've got to forgive them and then I'm going to keep my money? I'm like, kind of, that's kind of the step.
And you and I together, we can share this with a smile because we've been there. We've experienced this, right? But for other people who are like, oh my God, how can you forgive? It doesn't come overnight. It doesn't. It took 2 years for me to forgive OJ. I'm like, okay, he did. But
it took me 20 years, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like, it comes when it comes. again, it's all in his time, right? It's
right.
You pray for it, you ask for it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's forgiveness is huge, Rhonda. And I think, we live really in a world of haste and greed and envy, and everybody is like so angry at each other. And it's like, God, can we just like live, at peace? My grandmother, my Oma, so I'm German, right? So my Oma always said, my mom told me that at one time she had asked her mom, my Oma, said, what's your religion? We were born and raised Catholic, but my mom, Dita, had asked my Oma saying, what's your religion? And my grandmother said, kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness.
Yeah, that's right.
People can hurt us all day long,
right.
Every day of every year. Mm-hmm. Again, peace, harmony, all of that doesn't come overnight.
Right, but it's not even something that you even can think of. You can't even, when you're in the trauma, you can't even think
you can't even
imagine it. And you can't even, it's almost like you miss it. It's like, well, who am I if I don't have this trauma, right?
Yeah.
But when you brought up OJ a minute ago, this is and let me know if I get off topic and cut this part if you don't want it in. But when OJ did murder your sister, and my heart obviously.
But that's how I know you.
Yes, of course I know. So I don't have to sit there and go, I'm so sorry it happened, etc. Because we've gone through that. But I want you to hear that, and I want everybody else to hear that. When OJ did that, I was actually so, again, misery and horrible and screw him. And on the other side, just like this was his purpose in life, in the sense of he and Nicole are literally bringing domestic violence to the forefront.
Exactly.
And what an amazing contract to have, soul contract, that they decided, whatever, when they were angels in heaven, that we're going to solve this domestic problem. We're going to bring domestic violence to the forefront. And I think about that. Like I think about my father and me and my mom in heaven, and my parents go, they're not my parents, we're the three angels in the sky, right? We're three angels like hanging out in heaven. And we're like, what are we going to do this time? And my dad goes, hey, I got an idea. He goes, I'm like, okay, what? And he goes, hey, how about you eradicate fear for the world? I'm like, oh, okay, I can eradicate fear. That's awesome. And he goes, yeah, but something bad's going to have happen to you. And I'm like, oh yeah, what's going to have to happen to me? He goes, okay. Because I'll be the bad guy this lifetime. I'll be the bad guy. Right? I'll be the bad guy. I will. Okay, why don't you be the mom? I'll be the dad, and I'll be the bad guy, and I'll kill your mother in front of you. We're like, oh yeah, that'll be good, right? Now we're angels, right? We're like, we don't feel the pain. We're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then we'll bring fear to the forefront. Yay! And so it just took me 20 years to remember that.
Yeah. Right? And here you are sharing your experience, right? Now you've got fearless living, right? And
the thriving part. We're getting there, Randy.
We're getting there. But my head's exploding like popcorn with questions.
I know you're quiet. You're very quiet.
I'm just fascinated by the conversation. But two questions right off the top of my head. Does the word God does it still trigger you?
That's
today?
in the next one. Unless do you want me to answer it here?
No, I don't.
You know what? I think it does go here because this is part of it.
Okay.
So I was doing Course in Miracles. I actually got married during this time. And during this time, Marianne, her book came out, so she was no longer lecturing. And so me and my husband were looking for a church to go to. And so we found Agape here in Los Angeles.
I love
it. So I am going to Agape, and God, Reverend Michael's like, God, this, God, that, God. And I'm like, again, universe, light, source, but remember, I dedicated my life to be a minister when I was 13 years old, and I loved God ever since I was little. So there's that still part of me that just loves God. But I just was like, yeah, but you're over there. And I mean, I like you and all, but I can't trust you. So I like you. So I decided to take classes at Agape. Now, mind you, everybody's talking about God, but I'm in my head going universe, light, whatever. And I remember driving home one night, and it was raining, good old rain again. Here we are in the rain, driving home from Agape. I lived in the valley, so it's like, 40-minute ride. Driving home, and God is literally relentless. Surrender, come back to me, surrender. And I'm like, no, not coming back, and me and God, literally, he's like literally relentless. And I finally pull over on Mulholland and have to pull over because now I'm crying so hard and God is nagging me so much that I sit in a parking lot for, I don't know, half hour, 40 minutes. And I literally wrestle God, literally. And me and God are having it out. And I literally am like, yes, but if I believe in you again, if I come back to you again, if I trust you again, you are going to kill my sisters. You're going to kill somebody else to test me. And I can't take that. And I remember that night getting to a place as me and God are wrestling that I can no longer deny him. And if that means everybody dies, they die. Now, logically, you can go, well, yeah, but you knew that wouldn't happen. It's like, no, every cell in my body believed that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I remember going home that night going, okay, I've surrendered, right? And I was frightened to wake up the next morning to see who was going to be dead. And it took a while for that to relax. And even today, when I'm going through a challenging time in my life, I will have a nightmare about my niece, Rachel, who's the youngest, most fragile, smallest, petite, little tiny thing. And I will have a dream about her going through some horrible thing, dying or, getting flooded or something. And I know that's me, that part of me, that is the fragile part of me that's so scared, right? So I did, after me and God wrestled it out. And I'm dead serious, like wrestled it out. Mm. But then I fully surrendered and went and became a spiritual practitioner at Agape, went into ministerial school there. Did not graduate from ministerial school because Reverend Michael, by this time I had started Fearless Living, which we'll get to in a minute. And he was like, you don't need to become a minister. You already are. Get out of here. Get out of here. And I'm like, what? Get out of here. I'm like, okay.
Michael B is awesome.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. Another question I got, Rhonda, is you described this ritual that went for 4 and 5 hours off Mulholland up wherever it was in Coldwater Canyon. Mm-hmm. Was that something you learned or something you came up with yourself?
I came up with it myself. I'm sure somebody, I'm sure at one time I was in something about sage, or one time I probably heard something about this. But I did that myself. Now remember when I, that third suicide attempt, I started making up my own exercises. Well, that continued. I kept making up exercises for me, but just for me. I didn't plan on ever sharing them, right? And, but when I graduated from practitioner training, during that whole time, I was making up exercises for myself. And so that ceremony I made up. Because I knew that I had to go through something a clear line in the sand for me to say goodbye to my parents and hello to myself.
Finite.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're amazing. Well,
yeah. Anything else before we our next episode's the fun part?
I think because all the fun started after I forgave my parents on the 20th anniversary. Yeah, so I think we can move forward.
I think we can. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do it. So post-traumatic thriving, where we learn to dive, survive, or thrive.
The choice is yours.
All right. We'll see you on the Thrive episode next.
Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the life skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.